understanding how much I love a good action RPG with Metroidvania inspirations is key to understanding why I never have much money in my bank account. Whether it's the satisfying animation, the shot of dopamine when fighting new items, and just the exploration of a maze-like game world, it doesn't take long for a Metroidvania to rack up more than a few hours of playtime from me. So imagine my excitement when I was perusing the Game Pass section of my Xbox and found a record of Lotus War, Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth, an action RPG with heavy inspiration from the Vania side of Metroidvania. You play as Deedlit, a high elf warrior lady, as she explores through a large labyrinth of levels looking for information about her friends and lover and attempting to unravel the mysteries of this large maze. Does this game warrant the time it took me to play it, or is it a hard pass that you should all avoid? I hope to answer both of these questions, but hey, I should probably introduce myself. I'm the Phantom Merchant Jay Collins, and I'd like to welcome you to my shop. Since it's introduced pretty early on, the story discusses a group of adventurers who sought to protect the island of Lodos, and the one woman among them, a high elf named Deedlit, fell in love with one of her companions. After this brief explanation, Deedlit wakes up in a forest and she has no clue where she is or what is going on. After you gain control of her, Deedlit explores the forest before coming across a little sprite that she knows, a wind spirit named Sylph. Sylph actually feeds into one of the gameplay mechanics that I will discuss later on. Once she comes back to the clearing she awakens at, she finds her lover, the knight known as Parn, and when she goes to pursue him, she is eventually stopped by a mage named Carla, somebody that Deedlit seems to know. Carla tells Deedlit that if she wishes to see her lover, she needs to swear loyalty to the seemingly evil sorceress. Deedlit balks at the idea and refuses, hoping to find Parn on her own. When she does this, however, Carla tells her that she will now have to make her way through a number of trials, and even more strangely, she mentions another lost soul. From here, Deedlit's quest to find answers, and more importantly, to find Parn, begins. I won't go further into the story because I don't want to spoil it, but honestly, I was a bit confused at first. The plotline feels like it's fed to you in breadcrumbs, and it doesn't help that every character is apparently a person that Deedlit knows beforehand, and I was a bit curious as to why this was. Was there something that I was missing? Well, yeah, apparently there was, actually. So, upon further inspection, I found out that Record of Lotus War is actually a series of fantasy novels written by Ryo Mizuna from the 80s, and apparently it was so big that it had a number of manga, anime, tabletop RPGs, radio dramas, and, you guessed it, video games. So I had absolutely no idea about, well, any of this, and I didn't know about the books nor anything related to the books, and I sure as hell didn't know that this game was a part of a much larger overarching series. On one hand, this is awesome because I might actually check out some of the media about it as a fan of fantasy, but it also puts me in an awkward position because I don't feel like I'm the right person to break down the lore or even the deeper parts of the story, so I won't go any further in regards to that, just as well because now I can talk about the absolutely beautiful art style and music. So Wonder Labyrinth, as I will now call it, uses a very pixelated art style for character models, making it look like something from the transitionary period from the 16-bit and 32-bit eras. However, the aesthetic's biggest strength are the environments, a nice blend of reds, blues, grays, greens, all serving to make the environment and the various particle effects look nice, the latter of which being something that has always appealed to me when it came to games from this era that it emulates. In terms of sound design, there is very little in the way of voice, all dialogue is only written, and most of the sound effects are relatively stock. Nothing noticeably bad, but nothing amazing either. However, the music is very, very nice, a good blend of orchestral symphonies with a few bits of bass and guitars, and more than a little bit of an electronic track every now and again. Really feels like 1990s anime music, which I adore, and I guess it kind of makes sense considering what this is from. Now, this is all just from at a glance. I think now is the time to talk about a more thorough breakdown of the gameplay, shall we? Alright, so I'm gonna get the easy stuff out of the way. Most of Wonder Labyrinth's gameplay loop has you explore a map, fight bosses, and find ways to make the map loop around itself for easier travel. On some occasion, you'll find a thing that you can't pass through, then you find a power-up, and then suddenly you are able to pass through it. In between, you'll fight numerous bosses and enemies and level up, which allows you to do more damage. And sometimes you'll find power-ups that give you more health or give bonuses when fighting with one of the two spirits. Now, remember those spirits, because I'll get to that in a second. Unlike games such as Symphony of the Night or its spiritual successor Bloodstained, Wonder Labyrinth is considerably more linear, I guess you could say, as you unlock all the different areas pretty much one after the other after doing the appropriate amount of exploring and boss hunting. Sometimes you'll find statues that will heal you and also allow you to save. Other times you'll find these little glowing forests that serve as teleporters between one area of the map to the other. Really good if you find a power-up that could get you through an obstacle that you couldn't originally go through, but it's on the other side of the map. Armed with some type of melee and ranged weapon, usually a sword and bow, you are given two major ways of dealing damage outside of magical spells. However, the bow also serves as a device to help Deedlit get through a number of puzzles, as she can shoot tiny metal strips on the walls and ground that causes their arrows to ricochet, cutting ropes and spinning gears, allowing Deedlit to pass through certain obstacles. I like this idea in theory. My only issue is it feels like these arrows bounce off the metal relatively arbitrarily depending on where you hit it. Now, time to talk about my favorite aspect of the game. Why is it my favorite? Well, it gives me an excuse to talk about one of my favorite games, Ikaruga, in a video that I honestly didn't expect that I would. Or at least, I get to talk about a specific feature from that game. So, you remember Sylph, that little spirit that Deedlit found earlier in the story? Well, there's another spirit, Salamander. Both have their domain of a specific element, with Sylph controlling wind and Salamander controlling fire. For the sake of ease, we'll call them blue and red respectively. Like Ikaruga, if you're one color or the other, then energy attacks of the same color won't do damage to Deedlit, and in fact, she can use them to absorb mana, which can be used to cast spells or use her bow. This is all well and good, but some of the enemies who use specific energy attacks are also immune to that specific color. So you have to pick the opposite color, which makes you more vulnerable, but it also allows you to do more damage, or do damage at all. This way you can't sit back and spam attacks while absorbing your enemy's own. Even better, just because you're protected from energy attacks, you're actually still very vulnerable to physical attacks regardless of color, so you still need to learn the patterns of your enemies if you want to win. This gets particularly intense in boss fights, as you have to alternate between colors because some bosses will attack you with both colors at once, so you need to time your switches if you want to survive. Even better than that, when you land attacks as one color, then your spirit level in the other increases up to level 3. Once there, if you switch to that color, you are slowly healed of any damage you sustained. There is a catch, however. If you get hit, you lose one level of color that you're in, meaning you also lose any healing. I can't tell you how much I adore this system. It serves as a way to make boss fights more intense, almost like a shoot 'em up in some spots, while also giving you a reason to study your enemies to see which energy attacks they'll use, and also rewarding getting attacks in with heals. I loved it in Ikaruga, I loved it in Fast RMX, and I sure as hell love it here. Utilizing this color system and utilizing it well gives this game a level of depth I wasn't expecting, and man, that just endears me to this game as a whole. So now I think it's time to give my final thoughts. Record of Lodoss War, Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth, is a wonderful game that I honestly recommend going and checking out. I myself might actually go and check out some of the bits and pieces of the fantasy novels that it's also a part of, as well as some of the manga and anime, just to see how well that actually is. As for me, I would love to give a massive thanks to my dear friends MK Khan and Rain Resner, because they allow me to use the music that you listen to in these videos, and if you want to check out their Bandcamp, their Twitter, or their YouTube channels, you can check in the description below. And lastly, my name has been Jay Collins, and I hope you come again. Bye!